Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on texting and intercollegiate athletics. Today we'll review our research on texting in athletics and the general student population. We'll speak to experts within intercollegiate athletics and recommend some best practices for integrating text into your intercollegiate athletics operation. We ask that if you need to ask questions, please use the question sections of the GoToWebinar control panel. We will answer questions during the webinar and questions for our panelists. We will compile them and ask them during the discussions towards the end. To review the agenda for today, we'll review the panelists, our team at Mongoose. We'll review some of the results we found from our research. We'll really dig into each of the subject areas and leave plenty of time for questions. But I want to make sure that we're clear. Today isn't a sales pitch. We will not review the product today. We're going to talk about what we've learned from texting in intercollegiate athletics and make sure we highlight our fantastic panelists and their views, frankly. For those who are unfamiliar with us, Mongoose is the preferred messaging platform for higher education. Our platform is built specifically for higher education with a focus on communicating with students, and we're beholden to our nearly 300 clients. Their success defines ours. And I'm Mike Kuczynski. I am a client success lead at Mongoose. I will serve as a moderator today. And in my day-to-day, I have the privilege of serving a number of institutions and helping them achieve their various goals through a combination of institutional data, our messaging platform, and by consulting on best practices. My colleague, Andrea Palmer, our VP of Partner Success, will be monitoring your questions and passing them along so we can address them during the webinar. We have a fantastic panel joining us today. From Bryant University, Amy O'Connell. From University of New Mexico, Eric Schultz. And from St. Francis College, Brooklyn, Maggie Martini. Each panelist will talk in depth about their area and texting, and we'll also have a roundtable discussion over a few high-level topics as well. So some of you might be wondering what rules govern texting within athletics. Well, first, legally in America, per the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, assuming you are a nonprofit institution and an individual has willingly given you their number for the purposes of athletics, you are legally covered. For the NCAA, NAIA, and beyond, we actually got this question from many of the folks that have registered. I have yet to find an organization or sport that categorically forbids texting. With that said, you should still always consult your institutional conference and or governing body compliance contacts for details. Different sports and different levels will have different rules. Now, there might be some folks on this call who may loathe the New England Patriots and some who may love them, but you cannot deny how successful they have been over the last 2 decades. And when you dig into that success, usually you discover how well run they are operationally. They eliminate operational deficiencies, and that translates to freedom to spend more time on on-field performance, which leads to wins. For example, instead of chartering planes this year and being at the mercy of a charter company, they bought and staffed their own Boeing 767. They control its schedule, its setup, every aspect of the operation. Of course, this required a significant investment, but they believe it was worth it. In the same way, and certainly at a lower cost than a jumbo jet, we believe messaging platforms help eliminate the inefficiencies with engagement for athletic departments. Simply put, we're removing some of the administrative headaches so coaches and administrators can spend more time on the most important aspects of their job. To test this belief, we did significant qualitative research. We reviewed texting activity in our platform as it related to intercollegiate athletics. We interviewed staff members at the NCAA, a number of Power 5 schools, an Ivy League school, a number of quote-unquote mid-majors, a few D2 and D3 schools, and 2 non-NCAA institutions, and this is what we learned. We learned that texting between coaches and recruits is fairly standard. Congratulating on games, updates on their particular seasons, asking about timelines, forms, data, that sort of information. However, student athletes love emojis. In fact, we found it's a fantastic meme if you ever want to look it up. And Amy will tell us more about that phenomenon in a bit. We also discovered there are a number of very key features and functionality missing in some CRMs, databases, platforms, and information systems. Or, simply put, navigating or using the tool was far too complicated. And so we'll talk about what sorts of functionality and features you should look for a little later. Every single school we talked to had some variation of this phrase. Mongoose seems to work for recruiting, but this really makes sense for marketing operation. So right now, athletic departments spread information through your website, any digital or traditional marketing assets you have, any relationships with influential fans, perhaps press releases and relationships with local or relevant media, and your myriad of social media channels. So your super fans probably are in the know, but with a texting platform, you give them a greater sense of access and the ability to receive quicker, more personalized responses. For a more casual fan, you can contact them directly instead of hoping they stumble upon the right information. So say your team's highlight made the Sports Center top 10. You could simply text out on a medium nearly everyone has and ensure everyone knows about it and knows about it quickly. In terms of student athletes, we have a number of clients with general student populations and found that the same norms, ideas, philosophies that work for them also work in intercollegiate athletics and reaching out to student athletes. The names and touch points might change, but the general philosophy and the results of that engagement work regardless. Next, we'll talk about texting and the recruitment of prospective student athletes. For each subject area, we've saved some sample text from our platform and or from examples coaches or administrators shared with us. You can read some ideas while I introduce each panelist, and we changed names and eliminated institution names to protect anonymity. Our first speaker is Amy O'Connell. She is the Assistant Director of Admissions for Bryant University in Rhode Island. She used our platform at Mount Ida College, where she served as the Assistant Admissions Director for Athletic Recruitment. Amy has worked in finance and as a student athlete was a field hockey player and honor student at Western New England University. Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hello.
So, Amy, you texted at Mount Ida. Why did you start?
Yeah, so we started using texting at Mount Ida. Again, it's just another platform to reach out to our students. In the admissions office, we did a lot of communication with our students and primarily through email and phone calls. So since students were on their cell phones all day, every day, we figured that that was just another means to communicate with our students. So that's why we started. The efforts for using it and how it worked out was really successful. And especially for myself with the student athlete population, it was really successful. So prior to using the Mongoose platform, I would get text on my personal cell phone and my work cell phone from student athletes all the time because that was their form of communicating with coaches. So having the Mongoose platform made it easier to communicate with mass groups of student athletes. And then I also found that my response rate was exceptionally high because, again, that was the student athletes communicating with their coaches. So they were able to communicate with me through the admissions office in the same way. It also was a good way to build really personal relationships with the students. So even though it's still a professional relationship, I'm still their admissions counselor. I was really able to connect with students on a more personal level just through text messages.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And again, it sounds like it's breaking up a little bit, but we'll go on to the next question. So, what were the sorts of things you learned by texting student athletes?
Yeah, so the most important lesson that I learned through texting student athletes was the need for communication between admissions and athletics. And kind of playing off of that relationship with one another was extremely important and really helpful. I needed to get something communicated out to student athletes. The best option for me was to provide that information to the coaches and let the coaches blast that out through texting to their student athletes. If I needed things in particular, I could also have the coaches reach out to their student athletes through text. They would provide my phone number, and then the students could provide me with all of the information that I was looking for. Because the coaches were telling them to reach out to me, the students would do so right away. Again, that was where the need for communication really came in, because if I was going to a meeting all day and the coaches were reaching out and having their kids reach out to me and I couldn't get back to them right away, it kind of defeated the point of texting them and being able to provide them with a quick response. So overall, the communication between admissions and athletics, I think, was one of the most important things that I learned through texting with the student athletes.
That's great. That's very helpful. And then lastly, you mentioned emojis when we were doing our sort of introductory interviews. So how did that go? Did you send emojis back? What was that give and take like?
Yeah, so students love to send emojis. They would send them to me all the time. I would send a text and they would send me the thumbs up. They'd send me the thumbs down. Maybe some days they would send the fire emoji all the time. And half the time I was like, I don't know what this means, but hey, I'm going to roll with it. So it was a fun way to kind of make the conversation more interesting and exciting. So one thing that I started doing was at the end of a text message, I would just throw in a couple emojis. And then again, even if the text didn't require a response back, a lot of times I would get emojis back from the students, which was fun and entertaining for me. So just one example I had is I would send a text message out about an athletic check-in. So I would say, hey, on Monday, athletic check-in starts at 12 p.m. in this hall. I would send maybe a football and then our school mascot at the end of the text, and students would send back that thumbs up or can't wait with the fire or bust the football. So it was just a fun way to make the conversation light, but also the students were interested in doing that, so kind of giving them what they want.
That's great. Well, Amy, thank you so much. And please stick around for the roundtable and look forward to talking about those higher level topics with you in a moment. Okay, so our next speaker is Eric Schultz, and Eric joined the University of New Mexico Athletic Department prior to the summer of 2016 as the Associate Athletic Director for Compliance. Prior to becoming a Lobo, Schultz served as the Director of Compliance at Eastern Illinois. Where he was the sports supervisor for men's and women's golf, men's and women's swimming, men's and women's tennis, and softball. He also assisted with the development and corporate sales. And in college, Eric was a decathlete at University of Wisconsin Parkside, where he still holds the school record for javelin. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. And I guess what sort of things should schools consider in regards to compliance and texting?
Sure, and thanks for having me today. Things that I would say that schools need to consider while they're considering texting or in regards to texting, first is knowing the age of the prospective student that they're texting. The NCAA has specific rules on when you can start corresponding electronically with prospects. And once you get past the age of the prospect, then it goes into the harder to monitor aspect, which is the actual content of those messages. Depending on the age of the student, you can't offer aid in writing until a certain time. So making sure that the content of those messages are also appropriate, which having a platform that allows for monitoring of that would be a critical aspect and component. As you've seen, it's monitoring and NCAA compliance is a difficult job. It's a tricky job, and it's always trying to figure out ways to make sure that we're able to do our best.
That's great. Well, Eric, thank you. How do you currently connect with student athletes whenever necessary?
Sure. As I work in the compliance office, and then we have a multitude of advisors and staff, normally what ends up happening is we communicate through another platform, or we also utilize personal text messages. For example, almost every student athlete here at UNM has my personal cell phone message or number. So I probably wake up to one or two text messages a morning asking about financial aid or if they can go compete at this event this weekend. So our student athletes have a lot of access to our administrators and our staff. So it's one of those things that you constantly battle of being accessible and making sure that they know they can come to you, but also trying to have a balance of that work-life balance is critical.
Absolutely. And so, as I guess a tangent to that, what's that sort of contact with fans and donors like?
When I was the biggest thing with fans and donors when I was at Eastern Illinois, the contact with them is just making sure that they were updated on what was going on. We definitely had an older fan base there, so social media wasn't something that was actually connecting with them a lot. So it was either emails or phone calls, and we didn't have a way to mass text our donors. The other part of it is the historical aspect of it. As you're replacing staff, having some sort of mechanism to document and have a historical record of what you're texting and communicating only allows the new person that comes in to get up to speed quicker. And especially with donors, you don't have to ask the same questions again or try to figure out what they need if you already can find out and see it. And then with student athletes, I say this, it's good to have it on record so they can't forget perhaps, but I always enjoy having our student athletes rehash why they're there or what they're trying to do, because I think that helps them continue to keep their goals in perspective. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Eric, thank you so much for answering those questions. And just as a reminder to the folks who are listening out there, if you have questions for our panelists, we will review those in a moment. And please don't be shy, don't be bashful. They are ready and willing to answer pretty much anything. So please type those in, and we will ask them accordingly in a moment. Our next speaker is Maggie Martini, and Maggie Martini is the Director of Marketing and Senior Women's Administrator for St. Francis College, Brooklyn, where she is currently and successfully overhauling branding, web, and social media. Prior to St. Francis College, Maggie managed relationships for Super Soccer Stars with over 200 New York City partners. She has led community relations for Monmouth University, served as the director of intramurals at Barnard College, Columbia, and was a fantastic external affairs graduate assistant at Canisius College, her alma mater, where she captained the women's soccer team as an undergraduate. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us on the webinar today.
You got it. Thanks for having me here.
So Maggie, how do you connect with fans currently?
Sure. So, I mean, we do a lot the traditional route. We obviously, our website is our main driver. That's where we focus people towards. But we do a lot on social media. We have a newsletter email blast that goes out. We do a lot, depending on the type of group you're engaging with, we do a lot on campus. So a lot of our on-campus activities, whether they're commuter lunches or having a table in the lobby or having the mascot out in the community at different events and things like that. We try to engage as much as we can actively face-to-face with our fans and our supporters if we can. Our students are also our student athletes, and the students themselves are really their best marketers, and they do a lot to kind of get the word out themselves about things that are going on and what they're doing. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. That's
great. And so how is that connection sort of evolved over the last several years between emails and social media and now potentially texting?
I mean, all my marketers listening in know that everything is now, it's two-way communication. So it's no more that you just put it out there and hope that people listen to it. They're going to tell you if they're listening. They want to be more engaged. They want to be more involved. The fans, the student athletes themselves, the coaches, everyone, they feel like they want to be heard. And they feel as though that they really want to be listened to. So they want to engage. They want to be there. They want to be involved in as much as they can. And everyone really does their own job in marketing and getting the word out there about stuff. So it depends on your institution and how you let things roll. But everyone really is their own marketer. Each team, each coach, each person, they get out there and they really communicate that. And as long as they know the vision and they know kind of the core values of what you communicate and how you get that out there, then they do it their own way. And they're doing it. Like I said, they're doing it, and it's their social media, it's on their phones. It's like an additional limb to their body, so that they're constantly communicating with the world out there on behalf of your institution.
That's great. And you mentioned earlier the high commuter population at your institution. How valuable is texting and reaching out to that population?
Oh, it's how we communicate. I mean, I have about a list of 20 work study students and 25, and on a game to game basis, we send the message out. Who can work tonight? Who can work next week? Here's the schedule. Whether it's a Facebook group message or it's a text message that they get sent, that's the communication that you have with them. And that's the way we don't email anymore. no one reads their emails. That's for older people. So that's not my words, I swear. But no, we really do. That's our way of communicating with them and getting in touch and making sure that we know that we're getting across to them.
That's great. Well, Maggie, thank you so much. And it's a nice tangent to talking at a higher level with everyone. So the first question is, what have the effects been of the NCAA's hands-off approach to texting? And I think it probably makes sense to start with Eric in compliance, and then maybe go to Amy, and then Maggie.
Sure. I think the effects of the hands-off approach, the hard part is it used to be so regulated that as soon as a coach got caught texting, they couldn't recruit for a week or 2 weeks. So it was super punitive, and now they've kind of rolled back and put it into electronic communication. And the hard part is you can almost have any one of your staff members, as long as the students, your prospective students, permissible age, any one of your staff members can send text messages. So for us, in the example of football, because that's probably the sport we have the most amount of staff members, I got my director of operations, I got my player personnel, I got my recruiting coordinator. All of them are texting recruits, but they can't call the recruits. So I really have no record of what they're saying and really no way to monitor it. I can't tell them they can't text because then we're at a huge disadvantage in a recruiting function, but there's a lot of trust and put into those people to communicate the most effective and ethical way. And obviously I have full confidence in our staff, but it's still, if someone asks me, how do you have confidence? When I fall back on, well, I just know they're good people, I'm not sure that really holds up through a COI meeting.
And just for the folks who might not be in athletics, can you describe what a COI is?
Sure. COI is the Committee on Infractions. So that's a process through the NCAA enforcement. You don't want to be there if you don't have to be. And it's one of those things that they're going to ask for you to support how you feel that you're running your compliance office or how you think this happened. And when you don't have documentation to support one way or the other, it doesn't look really well. So it's just one of those things that documentation is huge, and that the paper trail, as we always call in compliance, is one of those things that we'd like to have readily available so we can support what we already feel is happening in the right direction.
That's great. Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, so I agree with what Eric said. I do think it is beneficial from an athletic standpoint and a coaching standpoint. And there's more leeway with being able to tax student athletes. And then just my personal experience from working with coaches is that the coaches know what they can and can't do. And especially when it comes to texting, they don't want to have anything in writing that they should not be doing. So I think them knowing that and having that trust in them is really beneficial. And I think that also plays into a role, again, of what I was saying earlier, of utilizing that athletic and admissions relationship. It also is really important at that aspect, too, because admissions may be able to text things that maybe coaches aren't comfortable texting, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Maggie, what do you think?
Yeah, from a marketing perspective, I mean, we all know the NCAA specifically, they do a great job with a lot of their championship events. And they're always looking for unique ways to kind of put a spin on things and get out there and do things differently. And so I think, having this approach and being one of the first to do it and to get out into that field and be creative with it from a marketing perspective is kind of an untapped venue right now, and there's a lot of things that you can do as long as you go with your compliance director. I hear you over there. But yeah, as long as you just get everything approved and you kind of go for it, why not? Why not be creative? Why not test the space? It's not going anywhere. It's something that people are already doing, so just jump on board with it.
That makes sense. Well, thank you. The next question we have is, do the recent events like the FBI investigation at a handful of Power 5 schools make you more squeamish about texting, or does it make a platform with texting more valuable? And I think we should probably start with Amy and then go Eric and then Maggie.
Yeah, I think this is an absolute, having a platform is an absolute necessity, especially one that can be utilized by so many different departments and that can also be monitored by one specific person, like a compliance officer or a legal team at the college. I think it's just so much more beneficial to be able to have that platform where you can do so many different things, but still have somebody control it and monitor it.
That's
great, Amy. Thank you. Eric, what do you think?
As I expressed a couple weeks ago to a coach of mine, I'm not sure, besides federal wiretaps, what exactly how you monitor some of that stuff. Obviously, the federal government was involved, or the FBI was involved in all of that. I think having a platform that has a historical context again, you at least have something to fall back on and say, here's what our coaches have been texting. Whether or not they put that in text, obviously I don't think they would, but I didn't think people would bribe people with bags of cash either in this day and age. But anything that can support and document what you feel your coaches are doing appropriately can only make you as an institution feel better. And then again, if coaches are doing the wrong things, as I explained to the coach the other day, it doesn't really matter what platform you have. They'll find ways around it. So it's one of those things that I don't necessarily know if it's going to help alleviate these issues. It's just going to make coaches more creative in ways around the rules. But it's definitely one of those things as an institution, you could say we've provided our coaches with every possible avenue to communicate, and we have the documentation of the communication. So from an institutional perspective, if you're looking from a straight institutional perspective, having the platform would help protect, I think, in that aspect. But I don't know if it would really alleviate the issues of coaches making poor decisions, because they'll find ways around it. Like anyone that wants to do something illegal, they find themselves a way to get around the rule.
Absolutely. Now, Maggie, it's being on marketing, you're probably less interacting on the recruiting side, but what do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, I do have sports supervision here too, so I understand, and I see the side of it. But listen, like I said before, it's a space that people are already in, and so if there's any way to provide from an institution standpoint an ability to protect and support yourself, document it, as long as you give individuals the proper training, I think it's actually a platform like this is beneficial, because then it gives them the proper guidelines to work within the constraints of what you allow. And it's really that extra level of support and that extra level of guidance that you provide them. And if they steer off the tracks, then you address that when it comes to it. But you've done your job as an institution to protect yourself and to provide the best kind of support that you can for the individuals in these positions. And from a marketing perspective, it's the same thing. I mean, if you send a text message out to a group of 550 students who are in your fan section, everybody has the same opportunities to answer to be a part of the contest, right? So you're protecting yourself in that way to make sure that you're not being slighted by saying, well, you picked this person to win it and to do it because you knew they were going to make the shot or whatever it is. So it's just an extra level of backup and an extra level of support.
That's great. Well, thank you, Maggie. And then lastly, we have the question, which athletic department staff or segment of the operation within athletics would be the best users to add within a texting platform? And I think we should probably start with Maggie and then go Amy and Eric on this one.
Me. Yeah, no, I would say, and it really does depend. It depends on what you want to use it for. And I think it's, there's so many people out there that are working at institutions, whether you're in athletics or you're not in athletics, but you have 10 different jobs, 12 different jobs that you're juggling. So high five to all of you out there who are doing that, because we're all there. We've all been there at points in time. And so if it's an easy platform, which it is, to be able to adapt to and adjust to, and you can have someone in your marketing department run it, and it's just a way for, like I said, individuals to feel engaged, recruits to feel that you're engaged, you're actually listening, you're comfortable in their space. Then it makes a huge difference. If it's a head coach that wants to run it, great. If it's an assistant coach that wants to take it over and run it, great. If it's your director of marketing or external affairs, awesome. If it's a graduate assistant that you think can run in-game promotions via text messages, then go for it. Again, as long as they're trained and they know the constraints of it, I really think it's beneficial to everybody. But I'm a marketing person, so I would say marketing.
That's great. Well, thank you, Maggie. What do you think, Amy?
Well, definitely 100% the coaches. And again, I think the coaches are already doing a lot of this texting, but if you have the ability to reach out to your entire recruiting database through one text message, that's going to save the coaches a lot of time and make their job a lot easier. And then also somebody in the athletic department, whether it's an assistant AD or, admin for an AD or something, I think that's really important too. Through the admissions office, I would get a lot of questions that were text to me from students that weren't really in my wheelhouse, but I would find the answers to them, and they were reaching out because they didn't want to pick up the phone or they didn't want to send an email to the athletic department. They just wanted a quick answer. So having maybe one person in athletics as well, in the athletic department that has access that can answer those quick questions for student athletes would be really beneficial as well.
That's great. Well, thank you, Amy. Eric, what do you think?
I think anyone that's in the department, I think that wants to use it would benefit from a system that allows you to monitor communication. Obviously, I think on my end, just like I think the other panelists have said, being in compliance, I think for me, our academic advisors and our athletic trainers would benefit from it probably the best, because it would get out of the realm of having to give out personal cell phone numbers and allow them to somewhat have some sort of work-life balance if possible. I think the coaches and the marketing and development, as Amy said, like, it's one of those things that it's really good to have a system that can be utilized by a multitude of people, but people have to buy in. You can spend $100,000 on the greatest system in the world, but if you don't buy into it and people don't use it, it doesn't matter how much money you spend. It's all about the usage of it and the proper training of it.
That's great. And we have a number of questions, which is great. We are going to put those towards the end of the presentation, and we're going to loop them all together. But please continue to ask questions. We have some great ones coming in, and look forward to asking the panelists more about their opinions. So thank you, folks. And we're going to next review basically some features and functionality that your systems and platforms should have, and some considerations along with those. So first, student athletes are absolutely part of your student population. So you'll want to think about integration. So how is data brought in from any institutional systems and into your athletic department systems, and vice versa? And that process should be very flexible amongst very departmental platforms, as well as your institution's system of record. And that flexibility also extends to how that information can be transferred, either automatically or through a relatively manual, easy process. And that process should be very painless, and very quick, generally. In terms of touching on what Eric said earlier, the NCAA claims that roughly a third to about a half of level 3 and level 4 violations are from inadvertent texts or calls to recruits who are not yet eligible yet for contact, or for contact made during what's called a dead or quiet period, where a coach can't communicate with prospective student athletes. And this should be easily avoided automatically. There's two ways you could do that. You could either disable contact to recruits before they hit a particular eligibility date or a deadline, or you could disable users' ability to engage during a quiet or dead period. In the unlikely event of any type of review, like Eric mentioned the COI earlier, you'll want a very quick, secure, and non-edited method for exporting contact records so they can be quickly sent to any internal, conference, or governing body contact. So for some institutions, That process entails them contacting their institutional legal counsel and obtaining phone records, and that obviously takes time. So what you would like to have is a platform where you can export that information very quickly and easily. And you'll certainly want the ability to target the particular audience you're trying to reach. So whether through criteria or knowing the particular identity of the folks that you want to reach, you should be able to target recruits geographically or by class year, by position, perhaps by how highly touted they might be, depending on your institution. And same way with fans. You should be able to classify fans as students, as donors, as season ticket holders, maybe as casual fans who might go to a couple games here and there and you happen to have their information. So all those sorts of ways you should be able to categorize fans and target the right audiences. And it's really, really critical to your operation. And then coaches are very comfortable usually publicly, but maybe they don't want their personal cell out to everyone. So you'll certainly want to have the ability to utilize a virtual number to hide any actual personal cell phone for your staff or for any particular coaches. And you could certainly have that virtual number be forwarded to a general office line. And you would also have the ability to be reached either by cell or by text through this one particular number. And as a note too, with any type of fan outreach, a head coach might not want to handle that sort of area. So they could certainly delegate that to an operational contact on their team or to like another assistant coach. So at this point, we've gotten a number of questions, which is great. Thank you so much. And so we'll review some of those submitted questions, and we'll open up the kind of the Q&A to our panelists as well as our team here at Mongoose. And the first one we have is, can we use segments in Mongoose to text student athletes by team? And if I may take that one, yes, do that. It's a fantastic way to communicate, and it's an opportunity to reach many individuals, but those responses would come in individually. So I don't know if anyone's on a painful group text or chat where one person responds and every single person receives that response. Using segments and using kind of that individual texting within Mongoose is a great way to help avoid that.
Mike, the next question we have was specifically for Amy, and the asker wanted to know if there was a specific person at her institution in the athletic department that she would contact for specific questions she didn't have an answer to, or did she go specifically to each individual coach to support that prospect?
Yeah, so it really depended on the question. So if it was more of a question that was specifically directed for the coaches, I would just tell the student really to reach out to that coach, or I would try to find the answer for them. If it was more of a procedural question about athletic related documents or physical information, I would reach out to somebody in the athletic office, usually the athletic director or one of the athletic trainers, to get the answer to then provide to the student, just to make it a more efficient process for the student.
That's great. Well, thank you, Amy. The next one here, I'll pass it over to Andrea.
The next question we have was regarding generating buy-in from coaches and athletics. That sometimes when you shake up a department that maybe likes to do things their own way from a compliance and administrative perspective, for the panelists, how have you found that this has benefited your student athletes?
I can jump in on this one, I guess, a little bit. This is Maggie. I think any change is difficult, right? Anything is different. But if you come at it from a perspective saying this is going to help you, this will help your program, your student athletes, your prospective student athletes are already doing this. Your fans, your spectators are already doing it. This is going to make your job easier. It might be difficult to start with, but that's always a good way. Show them the easy road. It's the easy way to do it.
That's great. Well, Eric and Amy, what do you think?
This is Eric. I think the easiest thing in my aspect of department buy-in is you most likely you're looking at something because a problem's been created or there's a situation that needs solving. So For example, when we buy any sort of technology-based program here at UNM, like there's probably an issue or a problem that we're trying to solve through that. So the buy-in, depending on how prevalent the issue is always difficult. But I think when you show people the actual uses of it and how it can simplify their lives, people buy in pretty quickly. And I think that's where having a quality mobile app, if you're going to have something that is technology based, if your mobile app doesn't support that, I think that's another thing that goes along with it. So as you're going through the process, just making sure that you're vetting and answering all the questions and having coaches on the committee. You know, we have a lot of coaches here at UNM, and there's one or two that rise to the top in terms of coaches' respect across all sports. So when we start looking at making changes, we probably engage those one or two coaches that we know that the department looks at and respects. And once we get them on board, they help sell it as well. So I think that as you go through the decision-making process, not just making decisions from an administrative level, but getting buy-in from all parties initially, and especially those parties that will help sell the new program to the staff.
That's great. Amy, what do you think about buy-in?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both what the other two have said. I am kind of on the same page. I think one of the most important things, especially when working with the athletic department, is showing them the benefits and the results that they could get from using something. So I think that's one of the things, if you just show them, especially in athletics, it's all driven by results. So if you can show them the benefits and how this could help their day-to-day functions, I think that's really what's important and essential for getting them to buy into it.
Gotcha. And the showing of results, do you do that by comparing it to another similar institution, or how would you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really have a definite answer for that, but I would think that just by showing how maybe other departments have utilized the process, or how maybe by utilizing it in comparison to what they were doing beforehand. I don't have a definite answer on that, but I feel like there's a couple of different ways where you could do that.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. And we've got two more here.
Okay, Mike, can texting be a first contact method?
Ooh, that is a fantastic question. So in practice, it's certainly possible. Would probably need a bit more context on how you'd want to use texting in regards to athletics. And I would certainly recommend establishing rapport before you just shoot out a text. But regardless of what you're doing to set up that first text, in that first text, you're absolutely going to want to introduce yourself and your institution. So you'll never just want to send a text that says, hey, do you want to go to my school? You always want to send a text that says, hey, this is Mike from Mongoose University. We saw that you're interested in our institution. Please let me know if you have any questions, as a very basic example. But panelists, what do you think in terms of reaching out to prospective student athletes with a text as your first sort of communication?
Yeah, this is Amy. I know from my experience that most of the coaches I worked with would do maybe an email out first and then follow up with a text. So I'm kind of with you, Mike, on that. I think that you can put a lot more information in maybe an email first and then follow it up with a text. But on the other hand, I know a lot of times the first form of communication for student athletes is to reach out through text. So if that's the case, I think that's great if the students are reaching out, but I think from an athletic standpoint, it's best to use it as a second means of communication.
That's great. Thank you, Amy. Eric and Maggie, what do you think?
I kind of agree. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Eric. Nope.
No, so I think the funny thing for me is, as over the last probably 2-3 months, I've actually started doing some internet sales for a friend of mine in a different company. But for me, you have to figure out a way to get in the door or get them to respond to you. So, in this job, like I send Facebook messengers, I hit them up on Etsy, like I try to get to them any way possible, because the biggest hurdle I'm seeing is just getting them to respond. So in my terms is although I don't necessarily like the way of texting as your first form or getting a hold of them, but if you're a coach and you're trying to get a hold of someone and you know that's how they communicate, get them to respond to you, and then maybe they'll pick up the phone when you call. I can tell you that when my phone rings, my cell phone, I probably ignore almost 90% of the numbers that aren't stored in my cell phone. But if I get a text message, I almost automatically respond at some point because I want them to know I got it, or if it's the wrong number, I want to let them know. So for some crazy reason, I don't know why I respond more to text, but I know that I don't answer unknown numbers, but I definitely answer random texts that I get because I want them to know that their efforts of reaching out aren't going unnoticed.
That's great. Thank you, Eric. Maggie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a balance, obviously, and I think it's the relationship that you build with your prospective student athletes, your fans, your spectators. I think it's good to initiate with. I'm always a face-to-face person, but obviously I understand that can't happen all the time. But if it's a phone call, if it's an email, I like getting the information out there. I would suggest, as you can tell even from this panelist, it's really up to you and your institution on how you go forward with it, and what you do first. But I'm a proponent of getting the information out there, sending it via a more traditional route, which maybe is an email now. I mean, snail mail's over, so but an email, and getting all that information there, and following up in a day or two with a text if that's what you thought. You just be like, hey, sent the email out, sent the information, want to make sure you and your parents had a chance to read it over. But just to keep it a little bit more traditional, and then the relationship can kind of grow from there, and the recruiting aspect can grow from there.
That's great. Well, thank you, Maggie. And the last question I'm going to take, if you don't mind. So if a student or recipient tells us they don't want to receive text anymore, what should we do? And I would say you should certainly stop texting those folks. The best thing for your brand is when somebody says, yeah, I'm not really interested, is to let them come back to you if they want to come back. And then obviously a platform should have some type of built-in unsubscription, tool or feature. So if somebody texts in the word quit or unsubscribe, those sorts of things, that should be somehow honored automatically in the system. So yeah, thank you so much to all our panelists who answered those questions. And we're going to give probably a couple moments here as sort of a last chance if there's any final questions. Oh, here we go. Here's a new one. A follow-up is, how have schools transitioned from the Mongoose number to coach's cell number? As with current student athletes, do the texts remain through Mongoose when students are part of the team, or do they move to their personal numbers for the contact? Wow, that is a heck of a question. So it would kind of depend on a number of variables. I would say that as much as possible, you want to keep information in the system. You certainly don't want your personal cell phone to be out there unless you're extremely comfortable with it. But as Eric alluded to earlier, for your records, for your ease of use, all those sorts of things, you should certainly try to keep everything within Mongoose as much as you possibly can. That's good. Well, I think that is it for our questions, and we're running low on time. So again, thanks to all of our panelists, Eric, Maggie, Amy. Really appreciate you taking the time today, and really appreciate the folks who hopped on this webinar. And have a fantastic Tuesday, and happy Tuesday, or happy texting.